In an ideal world, I would have got this out significantly sooner, but here we are, extremely short on time, but extremely high on excitement. Hello, my name is Athena of the Psychonics, and today we'll be diving into Zayne's myths, his consistent motifs, my speculation as to the matters regarding his existence, and his everlasting dynamic with MC. And so we begin. Zayne, the Foreseer, the Master, and the Doctor. To begin, let's start at the end, or at least what I interpret to be an end. The end in question? The Foreseer myth, Tower of Secrets. Tower of Secrets is a myth that takes place within the demigod Zayne's Tower of Thorns, wherein he wears the mantle of the Foreseer, a divine entity who bestows prophecies to envoys sent by their royalty. We do not get further information on the royal family, other than the royalty being gendered as male with His Majesty, and that for hundreds of years the envoys sent to retrieve the prophecies went missing, and thus no prophecies were bestowed. Whether they made their way to Zayne or not is a matter of speculation and not answered within the myth itself. However, we do see Zayne utilizing his magic to alter weather conditions during the latter portion, summoning a blizzard which keeps errant travelers away. The beginning makeup of the myth is something I've compared to Sleeping Beauty before across multiple aspects, and I said as much when the Meow Badges were released that were based on fairy tales. During that time, a debate amassed across social media as to which ally is which Meow Badge. My contribution? A sweet little thread on the subject where I surmised, if anyone is Sleeping Beauty, it's Zayne. He is a literal reality in his dreams, as well as locked in sleep in his myth. He's enshrouded in thorns and restricted by them as a core motif. Trapped and punished in a tower by a powerful entity, MC is the one to rescue him. The fairy tale is also known as Briar Rose, the name of the princess who is cursed and left to sleep in the tallest tower of her castle. Recall the name of Zayne's myth? The Tower of Thorns. In the fairy tale, the princess is cursed to die after touching a spindle, but the curse is nullified by a fairy or a wise woman who alters the wish to the princess falling asleep for 100 years, and in some interpretations, awoken by a prince. In Tower of Secrets, Zayne has not awoken in millennia for envoys from the king, just as Sleeping Beauty has not awakened for all the princes who died trying to get to her. But Zayne awakens for the false envoy, MC. Within the grim telling of the story, the fairy tale prince kisses Sleeping Beauty because he can't help himself, similarly to MC brazenly touching Zayne because she wants to confirm he is immobilized. Unlike the fairy tale, however, Zayne doesn't take this kindly, but it begins their romance nonetheless. The kiss is relevant to the end of Foreseer's story, as it symbolizes when Zayne wakes up from the nightmare of his servitude to Astra. MC is the celestial savior from the portion of the poem Zayne could not comprehend.
Celestial savior, is thou prepared to save him from darkness, to be his sanctuary amidst rime and gale, to allow the descent of miracles once again?
The riddle I've struggled with has an answer. At long last, I shall never forget you. I wish to end it on my own terms. May I?
The riddle that eluded him. The prince who saved Zayne. We'll loop back to this comparison, but so far I found the overlaps quite compelling in the standard alignments of the story, and the roles were switched, with a man needing to be rescued and MC, a woman, the savior. That has an all-woman writing team, so we should be surprised that instead of perpetuating gendered ideas of masculinity towards being the savior and the feminine needing to be protected, the greater role reversal speaks to MC's strength in a greater cosmic scale in terms of her romance to Zayne. This is not to dismiss or diminish other examples we have seen of MC going the extra mile for other love interests, such as during Lemurian sea god Raphael's myth, where she sacrifices herself as she was all too aware of the cost of her having his heart and slowly witnessing the decline of her love being too much to bear. And for Xavier in King of Dark Knight, where through an act of reversion permitted them to greet an end and revert back to a point of deviance and welcome a new chance and hope for reality. Those are of course third generation myths for two release characters, and the narrative and story caliber of them does depend on the aspects pre-established not just by prior myths, but also motifs and characterization established within the gameplay itself. For the Doctor's existence, however, there are multiple aspects where we see him posited as an outlier amongst the cast. Please note, I believe there are parallels, deviances, and intentionally polarizing choices between each love interest in regard to the story and dynamics portrayed in their own respective romantic journeys compared to all others. This is in no way to dismiss the others, but essentially highlight certain choices the writers made to position Zayne very intentionally within a different scope. Zayne sits apart quite uniquely. As though all love interests have fighting prowess, he relies on his magic, despite us seeing him clearly knowing his way around a gun in Death and Rebirth. We have, however, seen Zayne use his Evold to summon weapons, such as the Ice Bow in Neon Knight and Ice Blade Dawnbreaker Zayne conjures in his third anecdote. Magic in itself is something all love interests possess. However, as the game continues to develop, and more myths were unlocked, we began to understand the simple elements of light, ice, and fire stated by OG3 became obscured and added to over time. For Xavier, he has both light and time, with an ability to alter his own being's position in time and an intense level of power, which may potentially link to him being a celestial body. For Raphael, he is both fire and the god of the tides, or the god of the sea. A helm allowing him powers over the corporeal world, both in his flame's ability to sear and protect him from the oceans, and potentially symbolizing the flame that represents the will of the Lemurian people, and also control over the seas, oceans, and weather itself. For Zayne, he is often restricted just to the perception of his ice evil. However, this ideal begins to fracture when we begin his Foreseer myth in his alignment to higher divinity and his existence. The revelation of multiple lifetimes he could not remember, and they are his innumerable past lives with MC, brings more confusion and curiosity toward the oddity of the seemingly normal Doctor. The main cause for curiosity for me when I had first played Foreseer over a year ago was quite simple. How did Zayne offend the universe at large so greatly to be punished with a repeated fate like this? And what was he that led to such an outcome, as the offense must have been large to lead to such a punishment? This is only further reinforced with the release of his second myth, wherein he is Saming, a Chinese deity who is the master of fate. The opening lines of the myth state, "Some say a god dwells within the mountain, so one should never venture recklessly. It's said the god wields the power of yin and yang, governing life and death. He is the master of fate." The myth explainer centralizes on Dasaming, the greater Saming, which suggests this is a potentially more powerful incarnation of Zayne and one of the many lifetimes before the perpetual punishment of Foreseer. Yin and Yang are key principles within Chinese philosophy, and represent two polarizing forces that come together to create a complementary synergy, and make up all aspects and phenomena of life. It encompasses the actual process of the universe and all that is in it. Saming's position demands a lot of power and respect. This authority speaks to this incarnation of Zayne's significant intelligence, wisdom, and respect to hold the position, and directly relates to the celestial heavenly sphere in Xinsha. The myth itself sits within the popular Chinese genre of high fantasy, often centered around immortals and cultivators who can develop within their own powers by cultivating. All this genre will explore telling stories of supernatural encounters. Heaven, the mortal realm, and the demon realm are the common trifecta of settings for such stories, and Zayne's Snow Embrace sits within the romantic genre of this as an immortal deity Saming who falls for his disciple MC, to whom he is her Shifu, meaning master, in which he trains her to improve her cultivation on a remote mountain. The myth has a mature tone and features a gentle, sweet dynamic full of propriety between Zayne MC and reinforces her childishness and the brightness she brings to his life, despite being condemned by all around her, something faulty within her. During the myth, we are made privy to Zayne's duty, which calls upon him to rectify the existence of the variable by elimination. Zayne speaks against this, calls off his peer, the old man who refers to him as Your Grace, reinforcing that he is in a position of reverence even amongst immortals. And he states that won't be necessary. When his peer asks him that he can handle the situation, Zayne refuses.
Isn't she that variable? She finally appeared.
I've seen her fate. It's clear, untainted, and untouched. There are no signs of her becoming a variable.
What your grace has seen is only her present. And even if she has no intention of harming others, it won't stop them from resenting her. I heard a small serpent went mad in the mountains. Your grace must know the reason, yes? When a person has something unique and precious, they will no longer live in peace. Since your grace has already accepted the role of Saming, the variable must be eliminated as soon as possible. Any problems that could occur in the future will be avoidable then. If your grace is unwilling, Should I do it instead?
That won't be necessary.
And in a post-MOF state, it might be easy to believe that he planned this for a very long time. The myth concludes with Zayne using his life force to suppress MC's power at his own expense, which MC realizes in what is translated in English as scent she's familiar with, but in the original Chinese, she senses his qi, one's primordial life force, which emanates from the divine tree, but she is unable to initially recognize it. After some time, due to the umbrella left behind by him, she makes the association that he is gone and finally breaks, as his qi emanated stronger from the umbrella he left her. Thus, his declaration that
My snow won't melt
speaks to his knowing sacrifice. Whether he has died or lost a corporeal form due to extensive and intensive use of his life force, we do not know. And within the Shinsha genre are mortals who oppose the will of heaven, as Zayne had by letting MC the variable live go through heavenly punishment. This can be inflicted in multiple ways, but is often depicted as lightning strikes from the heavens. The irony is that MC in our timeline has astrophobia, a fear of thunder and lightning made evident by Caleb's Bond story, but also Zayne has a call at Affinity 161, Nightmare Thunder. Whether Master of Fate will receive a sequel due to its immensely open-ended nature, or MC scouring the earth with her unmelting umbrella to find Zayne again, is yet to be seen, as if he did just die, can potentially remanifest, or imprisoned bearing heavenly punishment is also to be seen. Yet the banner's event name, Trace of Divinity, and the myth's name Snow's Embrace call to Zayne's love embracing her with protection beyond himself when he is no more. It is a trace of divinity left behind when he once again, like Foreseer, opposed his duty and defied fate for his love. Death and Rebirth also re-solidified Zayne's affinity to godlyhood, with Yvonne's extremely unsubtle remark about Zayne that it's like the difference between gods and mortals. We can only admire him from afar. Death and Rebirth Chapter 2 goes on to explicitly associate the higher plane of existence as Zayne's key sphere in the following sequence. They utilize the official resonance order for the love interest to distribute this information, but MC only makes the association with Xavier's Life in the Future backtracker and Raphael's Life from the Ancient Ocean Lemurian civilization. MC is unaware of Zayne's divinity, and thus she does not attach him to the higher plane, but the overarching narrative does, with the boy leaving the Fractal Library in pursuit of Zayne after 7 years for him to take his helm as the emissary, which Zayne refuses. MC hears the boy called Zayne this, and if you question him on what he was called, Zayne dismisses the title. Only after Zayne and the boy are alone do they have a more frank exchange, and we learn more of Zayne's ties to the special library that belongs to no civilization, time, or space. This, alongside the boy leaving behind his Accessus bracelet, and Zayne using his Ice Evil to create another, once again explicitly showcases Zayne's ties to higher divinity, whereas Ice allows for the creation of a door that splits the dimensional space and allows the boy to return. Zayne's Ice has dimensional magic properties, reinforcing his higher entity nature. Dr. Zayne's interaction with dimensionality doesn't end here, as they also permeate into his dreams that are tied to another space and time. The Dawnbreaker aspect of his narrative in the third anecdote presents both Zaynes, which are both real complete beings in their respective worlds, perceiving the other's reality through dreams. Dawnbreaker finds solace in his dreams and his dark reality and finds himself falling for Hunter MC, whilst he spends his time reaping abominations in a dying world. However, Dr. Zayne has no solace in his dreams. His perspective and the guilt from the childhood incident of almost killing MC, for which he bears a deep shame, eat away at him mentally, and are further made worse by the reality he perceives in his dreams to be mocking him, keeping the cycle of guilt and depression alive. This is a core aspect of Zayne's narrative in Death and Rebirth, as Zayne's self-awareness to the reality of his actions does not erase the weight that they bear on top of him. MC being the biggest component in his self-hatred for his inability to control himself, and an innate aspect within him wanting to kill her. The link between dimensionality and planes of existence also align with the ideas of dream and sleep. Some believe dreams allow for one to visit other dimensions. And in terms of Dawnbreaker, we as a witness know this is true, but Zayne, though, he does not know that for himself. The boy also states Zayne's dreams are a punishment, which he should be all too aware of as they torture him incessantly. And we witness firsthand how his psyche betrays him within the spatial realm of Thorns Under the Moon, as well as when he recedes into himself before he attacks MC, again close to the end of Death and Rebirth. Dreams as a motif have been utilized across love interests, but for Zayne the motif is core within the principal aspect of dimensionality. As stated earlier with the Sleeping Beauty comparison, Zayne's affiliation to sleep and dreams is a corporeal aspect of his dimensional presence. In Foreseer, like Sleeping Beauty, Zayne wakes up from his endless, torturous, allegorical dream of his existence and reclaims his reality after his first and last kiss with MC. Across both Foreseer and Master of Fate myths, they end with MC's last interaction with Zayne being him guiding her towards sleep. Sleep is seen as a solace he can give her, and a way he ensures her protection, though not one current Zayne has for himself, unless you are later into the romance timeline where he states he sleeps easier with her, which is frankly quite refreshing. In the myths, their farewells beckon her to dreams, and leave a deep yearning for his loving sacrifice through death or distance. Dawnbreaker's existence as a dream parallel in Anecdotes and Thorns Under the Moon, Zayne saying MC saved him in his dream in Fragmented Dream, and in Dream Revisited, MC could be perceived to be the princess and Zayne the priest, with her defeating a great evil and his return to her, all aligned with the importance of sleep and dreams, and MC being Zayne's savior. Dream Revisited especially touches on Zayne and MC's relationship in multiple ways, from comedic moments, romance, and how they confide in one another. Zayne has an interesting bit of dialogue relating to the priest and princess story after inquiring how it ends.
I'm glad it didn't have a sad ending.
If fairy tales had sad endings, children would be crying their eyes out.
Some may not cry in front of others, but sad movies can still make them tear up in secret, even if they're no longer children.
Oh? Someone seems to be speaking from experiences.
When it comes to watching sad movies, I remind myself they're not true stories. It helps.
What about real life?
Real life doesn't always have happy endings. However, with you here, my story won't end in tragedy.
Zayne's desire to avoid tragedy in fiction is quite interesting and speaks to the perpetual tragic cycle he is stuck in, with the weight of being a doctor, the burden of being a killer of Volturum, his loneliness he grew up with, and mental health issues, all made worse for wear by his own evil that cuts into him. After such prolonged tragedy, one cannot blame the Doctor for wanting to hear more of happiness, a cruel irony as he is seemingly unaware of his countless tragic past with MC. Then again, the soul may remember, and his heart already has so much to bear. The place in the distance that I want to reach, it's there. I point to the night sky. Beyond the sky, there are vast plateaus, towering peaks, galloping horses, myths, fireworks, and so much else. I lower my hand, then I point at him. You. After what MC says, Zayne reassures her he is there with her, not something unattainable and beside her.
I'm not far away. I'm right here, by your side.
Unlike his myths, wherein he remained by her side in his own distinct supernatural ways beyond death or distance, they are able to partner together despite their many partings in the past, and walk into the new future side by side. Now we enter the main body of this video. Zayne, the god of annihilation, speculation and analysis. Edge of Continuum is a name that elicits a sense of being on the precipice of a greater change. A continuum is defined as something that changes in character gradually or in very slight changes without any clear dividing points. However, to better grasp the terminology for the scope of the myth, one has to first reconsider the scopes and themes involved in Zayne's plot. Within that, a different definition and perception emerges. So first we must delve into the makeup of the myth and the pre-established aspects of the characters and story therein. The everlasting goddess of Niava who shatters the balance of fate and pours forth all power to shield the newborn world. This is a position that MC takes within the world of Edge of Continuum.
Your injuries. This is your resistance against me.
Another deity of Niava, hear my supplication. Heal my wounds and bestow upon me your power. MC is speaking almost aggressively towards Zayne, reinforcing they are at odds with each other. At least, this is what can be inferred by the quotation around deity. There may be a past history, but as the description dictates, the very god who seeks to bring about its destruction is the only one who can save and heal you. Desperate times call for desperate measures, yet something deeper within both stirs. Zayne's arrogance in the appearance of this kindled is on a whole new level. He even seems to smirk at her after catching her admiring his physique. But primarily as a higher god, knowing MC is at his whims, despite their aggression towards each other. Zayne almost expects this game of reverence, and unlike Master of Fate, there is less gentle propriety, and more explicitly the tension between a god and goddess, at odds manifesting into an intense healing ritual. Power of Annihilation, feel this and remember what I'm giving you. They entwine their fates together upon the principle and precedent of complete destruction. perhaps to aid her against whatever ails Niava, the world they reside in.
Your ritual won't end because you want it to.
Makes me think of how often in magical rituals, there can be a backlash or negative consequence for the parties involved if they leave a ritual incomplete. Thus, to avoid such an outcome, Zayne may be reinforcing the rules of their agreement. I would like to add, I think this is too much of a blunt and literal translation of what he said, and that a better word choice would have been, the ritual has to be conducted to completion. This could also be a play on the concept of hieros gamos, which means sacred marriage in Greek, and are sexual relations of divine persons engaging in intercourse for the land, the community, and the continuation of the cosmos. If MC is approaching Zayne to heal her and she protects Niava while Zayne was set on its destruction, to me the situation reads that their union is an example of this hieros gamos, and thus Zayne would have to change his course of action and thoughts on the world as he's now tied to its salvation. To a degree at least. The gendered aspect of this is also a contributing factor. In terms of yin and yang, yin is feminine and yang is masculine, and during Snow's embrace, we can interpret Master of Fate Zayne using his control over yin and yang to suppress Disciple MC's power, to realign the balance and cement harmony. Within the description once more, the mention of soul rift speaks to Zayne's interaction with spirituality in terms of power. We saw this before with Foreseer's prophecies, at the whims of Astra, and Master of Fate's control over yin and yang. As the latter governed life and death, and the former could gaze into the future of others, the aspects of higher plane divinity is reinforced further in this higher god and potentially origin, or next to origin, myth for Zayne. Divine grip aligns to her claymore, and with their resonances, they render divine judgment. This alludes to Zayne's potential alignment of inspiration to the Greek goddess Themis, the personification of justice, divine order, and custom. And she is also associated with prophecies in the Oracle of Delphi in Greek myth, which links back to Foreseer. The accompanying event for this myth is called Golden Verdict, adding to the narrative that Zayne plays a divine judge. Will you swear in Niava's name to exchange with me, even though we stand on opposing sides? This question appears to be coming from MC to confirm their obligations to each other in their exchange are not hindered or affected by their direct opposition, with her as a defender and savior and him as a destroyer. Zayne's words appear extremely seductive and carnal, with an overarching selfishness and equality in mutual greed. His kisses glimmer golden, likely symbolizing the divinity and mysticism in their carnal exchange. Within their coupling and union, there is a kindredness that stirs beyond the mutuality of emotions and intent. Upon the Destiny Stone, name is carved. From this moment forth, our fates shall never part. Zayne MC carved their names, entwining their fates, and now it makes more sense for their innumerable fated encounters, across worlds and incarnations, that created a Jasmine Field's worth of past lives by the time of Foreseer. No god decided this other than the one she laid with upon the Destiny Stone. This is depicted by the golden string of fate from her left ring finger tying up to his, their encounters interwoven within the fabric of the universe itself.
From now on, I shall ensure your every wish comes true.
This is a promise and a proclamation of Zayne's as a god to his partner, and the theme of wishes run deep for Zayne, with Everlasting Wish touching heavily upon their desire for more time, and Zayne's growing emotional openness and honesty in his affection. Whilst in Iceborne Warmth, Zayne admits his desires to not only wish for her happiness, but to be the one by her side in it.
I wish you could be happy for all of eternity. But an even greedier wish of mine is, I wish to be the person who's always by your side when you find happiness.
This is Zayne's avarice, a supremely romantic and selfish desire he permits himself to admit, and she gladly accepts and reflects. Their fates were crafted by their own hands within divine ecstasy. Master of Fate Zayne said,
I might be bound by destiny, but I don't believe in it.
But for the god who chooses to be selfish, the only fate he is beholden to is the one he created with his true love. It's also why he is the exclusive prefix fate changing at Affinity 210. Zayne MC changed the direction of fate because of their draw to one another. The Destiny Stone does appear to also look like a Mesopotamian sun, which we do know is one of the inspiration cultures as per the artist interview, that also somewhat mirrors a Dharma Chakra, or the Golden Dharma Wheel from Dharmic faiths, especially Buddhism and Hinduism. Spirituality plays a large aspect within Love and Deep Space narratives, with various inspirations across its multiverse. For the Dharma Chakra, its circular form represents the perfection of Buddha's teachings, and 8 spokes the Noble Eightfold Path. In both Buddhism and Hinduism, the principle of nirvana is seen as an end goal, which requires the removal of personal desires and wishes, of the corporeal and selfishness to ascend. The issue is, Zayne, in his link to MC and persistent prioritization of her, will fail in this endeavor due to his growing selfishness to see her live and survive at any cost, even to himself. If gods have selfish desires, then he must want his beloved to live. Zayne, slowly embracing his more selfish nature despite how extremely selfless he is, feels so gratifying because this whole myth explicitly showcases his selfishness. The avarice in the wish in iceborne warmth of the Doctor was manifested before in the desires of the god of Annihilation. Absolution isn't a fixed reality. It's where she's safe. Zayne also states,
The avarice of my wish is unyielding. Trading all the beauty in this world to make a reality wouldn't be enough.
These are not pretty words from Zayne, but a genuine heartfelt admittance to a declaration he should be ashamed to feel, yet in the face of her, cannot. Zayne admits in his earlier World Underneath story 2, Snowy Stairs, Chapter 5, where after being asked by Carter if he would make an exception for MC, his lover, wouldn't you use everything in your power to prevent your loved one from dying? Zayne does not respond. The narrative permits us insight of Zayne's answer in that, of course he would. Zayne answered this question countless times in his art, and no matter how many years have passed, his answer still hasn't changed. He would do everything he could to prevent her death and save her. But the night is long, the fog is dense. If the end of the road is truly what's left, Zayne closes his eyes. At least he still has another option, his last one. And before the storm arrives, he only hopes he can walk a little further on this rugged path. He could also hold her hand and resist the avalanche-like onslaught of selfish wishes together. She is his exception in every way. Against his own moral boundaries, the fabric of what makes him stand firm upon his beliefs is undone when it comes to her. And MC chooses him too. Foreseer witnessed their tragedies many times, and to me that speaks to him being a future incarnation, and the potential final future past before current Hunter timeline resets the loop and acts as the convergence of the timelines. God of Annihilation, I posit, sits earlier, when Zayne still reigned as a higher god, and before his potential fracturing of himself in the name of love. I'll touch upon this idea of fracturing later, as it feeds into some long-standing speculation I've had regarding Zayne's story. The basic overline of the myth is as follows. Both are gods and deified. They're at odds, but she comes to him as the only one who can grant her solace from injuries. There's a deeper tension and attraction between them, leading to the intimacy of their coupling. But the precedent makes it seem like it was an exchange. Zayne has always had elements of being dominant and firm, but also enjoys being under MC's whims. And he prizes MC's autonomy and desires above his own. This situation for the first kindled may have more factors at play, similar to Tomorrow's Catch-22. The precedent sets the score, but even so, something deeper emerges. As stated earlier, the ritual aspect often in fantasy suggests if a ritual goes unfinished or is interrupted, both parties can sometimes incur damage, or other conditions we have yet to see. What we can see, however, is that their desires are mutual, and she actively reflects and instigates further action, for example, the removal of his clothing. Then entering the combat preview, the pyramid, which I do just want to say I do think it looks kind of like a protocol, which is kind of funny, but I don't really understand. It's a yellow protocol. I don't think it's a protocol. I don't think it's like half of the diamond-shaped protocol. I'm going on a tangent, but I'm not going to overthink that. I think it's just meant to be like, maybe it's his the manifestation of him making something. The pyramid motif persists, with Zayne conjuring a golden pyramid, which is a key motif across the myth. The physical locale of Niava, inspired by ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, has a lot of pyramids in the visual. Yet, Zayne's conjuration may speak to a bigger metaphorical meaning to the shape. Triangles have many affiliations, and one of them can even be representations of the 4 elements, working for the 4 different sides of the pyramid. If his powers do not just end in destruction, and when all 4 elemental symbols are combined, they create the symbol for ether, the 5th element. But as mentioned earlier, could potentially link into creation. A great understanding of the fusion of components that come together to make realities into being could be hinted at. Triangles can also mean beginning, middle, end, birth, life, death. I think my shungite to better represent what I'm about to say, but the pyramid could also represent the nexus of possibilities and deviations leading to a focal core convergence point, or that all deviations and possibilities lead to the same outcome.
Obliteration ordained by fate.
Cannot be defied.
Heed the decree of 2 gods.
Obliteration ordained by fate. Zayne's nature is once again connected to the conception and realization of fate itself. As the master of fate, he did not deliver the death of the variable he was meant to, as he fell for her. His end could have brought about an ascended incarnation that could have come into being to resolve the fault he created. This further works of his creation alignment is what created this world for her. But one can only break boundaries so much when they are meant to be the great judge and corrector. To Zayne's obliteration ordained by fate dialogue, MC says, cannot be defied. MC finishes his message, acting as she herself too is an instrument of a greater will. And they together combine, thus the dialogue, when you and he awaken as the deity of Niava, thus all who bear witness to them must heed the decree of two gods. Behind them appears to be an orrery, which represents the solar system and allows for predictions of the movements of celestial bodies. This works for Zayne as the divine observer and was first seen in his time lock key event. Furthermore, the birds representing their multiple encounters fly across the cosmos, further unifying them. We'll go into the birds a little bit more later. Zayne stands firm in his judgment of what deserves to live and what deserves to die. Thoughts are not to be taken lightly, and erasure allows for the creation of correction. This mirrors Zayne's dialogue from the release trailer of the game.
Imperfect order doesn't need to be corrected. True redemption lies in utter destruction.
Like a grand mathematician and judicator who, upon seeing an incorrect path, erases and destroys the calculation to allow the correct outcome to fester upon the pages of the universe. As two gods rendering their corrections upon others, the union and dialogue seems fair and just, and speaks to their power and mutual understanding in their core aims. However, there is an irony in this, as MC was not meant to be, and in Death and Rebirth perceives her manifestation into a corporeal entity as a universal fault, to fall for the one who was meant to end her in Master of Fate. Witness her changing fate and her eventual death over and over, as Foreseer stated. One is reminded that Master of Fate changed her fate, but did not witness the consequent death that was meant to occur as per the precedent set by Foreseer. The promise of departure that the Foreseer myth Tower of Secrets states was not resolved within Snow's embrace. So one has to wonder, could Edge of Continuum be the future of that Varial that was spared by her master? Or are we witnessing the origin or second to origin myth of Zayne MC, wherein their Jasmine Field's worth of past lives begins or second to begins? I say second to because I feel that there may be a myth that sits before this, as I don't think they would make Zayne's origin not Chinese. There's just something within me that says that they would utilize something even more Chinese as his pure origin, and this could be potentially a second moment that's after that, wherein the fated encounters is actually what spawns. I have a similar belief even for Silas, as for example, I believe Beyond Cloudsfall is actually his second myth as to where the soul tie is established between the two of them, but there was something there beforehand.
This is where you shall perish. Struggling is a futile endeavor.
This line for the introduction of his key art of an extremely majestic yet brutal judge and god, the ability to be resolute and firm, is crucial when executing retribution from the eyes of a divine observer.
Then I want you to stay by my side forever, starting from this moment.
The tone shift to his likely romantic and intimate 4-star card, which we have seen a pattern of over the past 4 myths, speaks not of ends, but of eternity. And across quite a few of Zayne's cards, we have allusions to eternity or timelessness. Despite being at odds in the beginning, the enemies become reluctant allies, passionate companions, and sweet lovers. His gaze is not hidden behind his bind as he looks upon her. Neither has it been destroyed as per the other 4-star art, but just trails down lightly. It also appears that Zayne MC are in a pool of some sort, and he's impressing her with his mystical conjurations of golden birds, a motif seen across all 3 myths and speaking to the meetings and partings. It evokes imagery of MC's first meeting with an Arctichion with Foreseer, with Zayne again tenderly watching on. The mirroring seems very intentional in that regard. Follow the path of the Golden Aenzu, through the corridors of the Divine Tower unto Edge of Continuum. Without an end, nothing new can arise. This is the unshakable law that governs all realms. The Divine Tower immediately made me think of the Tower of Thorns, which is the fractal library, and due to the nature of the library, it could exist in any reality Zayne does. And with how Zayne interacts with space, its form is likely his creation. If we think back to the incident with the Accessor's bracelet, belonging to no space or time means it could exist in any dimension of reality, as it exists between dimensions. The visual transition from night to day could also metaphorically insinuate what these celestial bodies mean to Zayne MC. The moon symbolizes a more complete and harmonious world compared to the impending doom of the sunset and cloudy world that we see later on. Across Zayne's content, it's kind of been used as an allegory for his affections for MC, as well as just the romantic aspect of their relationship. This is obviously not necessarily exclusive to them completely, but it is a very big indicator that we've noticed quite a lot, especially with how it contrasts to the sun. During the Partner Go-Go story ending, MC says to Zayne, "The moon is beautiful tonight," and they are about to lean in and kiss before Heartbreaker very rudely interrupts them.
Whose heart is racing right now?
Doesn't this also mean our relationship has improved?
Your plan was effective, yes. However, our mission of mutual exploration isn't over.
You still remember that?
I've always been proud of my memory.
Zayne takes my hand and pulls me to his side.
The moon is beautiful tonight, but we should be heading back now.
We also have a text sequence where Yvonne and Grayson both mock them with the moon is beautiful tonight, isn't it? Quote. In the Master of Fate event, Yunshan's charm that ran when it came out, there's reference to moonlight at their feet, and the entire event is very, very romantic. And Zayne is essentially speaking in allusions to what he would do in the position of a god, with how do whatever he could to just protect one person.
Gods aren't emotionless, so perhaps they aren't too different from humans. They're simply capable of doing a bit more. When emotions and desires are involved, selfishness is bound to exist. Maybe a god only wants to protect one person. Therefore, that god will hear any wish she makes.
The Mountain Journey event that accompanied the Wonder in Wonder multi-banner also had Zayne and MC crafting a cloud and a moon out of jade for each other. MC created him a cloud and he gave her a moon.
It's named after me?
Do you like it?
And next to the cloud, there should be this, too. It's only complete with your little moon.
And it's very sweet in how he always aligns her to the moon, and it's also speaking to what actually happens in the card. Moonlit Dream. Within the card Moonlit Dream, MC and Zayne are transported back in time, essentially, after she resonates with an object, and they have to find their way back to each other, and it's a piece of jade. Very culturally significant to Chinese culture. Zayne acts as a physician, whilst he's also waiting to find MC again. Meanwhile, MC is acting as a jade sensor. The dynamic works quite well in the card because Zayne then ends up becoming a jade carver to help them get back home, as they need to impress upon his Shifu.
Someone gets distracted easily when carving intricate patterns and appreciating the moon. And she wants to test me.
The card is extremely romantic, and again alludes to more further intimacy between Zayne and MC, to the point where they get a little bit distracted when he was meant to be carving jade at night. Within the Moonlit Dreams kindled sequence, Zayne calls MC the moon. What are you looking at?
The moon.
It is the most beautiful thing and an embodiment of her.
Blame the craftsman. And the moon.
This kind of further aligns him to Hou Yi and MC as Chang'e, the goddess of the moon. So the intentionality of the bow finally coming back into play when we've been waiting for Zayne to have a bow, as it was utilized in beta. All of his standard companions utilize that for that ultimate sequence, and him directing her on how best to use a toy bow in the Festive Blessing Chapter 2 exclusive tutorial. Well, it's a toy bow. She knows how to use a bow, but he's like, you have to accommodate better for a toy bow. My pose should be correct. He loosely holds my hand and his voice is right next to my ear.
Perfect. But when you're using a toy bow, you need to adjust your strength and posture. You'll get better results that way. Move your hand up.
Oh.
Keep your posture in mind. Don't look at me. Look at the target.
I focus my attention back on my posture. My breath syncs up with Zayne's as I relax, then I aim and release the arrow. It's a perfect bullseye. Zayne releases me. And of course, the Neon Knight card. All of this just shows how hinted the Archer dynamic was for Zayne. So it was something that was definitely going to happen at some point, and we're very glad to see it. But it does also beg the question, especially with the alignment of the moon, if there are further allusions to Hou Yi, as Zayne definitely seems to be some sort of divine archer. Also want to add Thoth, the Egyptian equivalent of Hermes, who Zayne has an association to with his key art, was the god of the moon and wisdom, alongside knowledge, science, judgment, and more. And his wife, Ma'at, embodied multiple concepts, but notably truth, balance, and cosmic order. She prevented the universe from returning to chaos. She is also involved in Egyptian judgment of the dead, judgment of Osiris, but by being the one believed to balance the scale that measured the weight of the heart of the deceased. to test of conformity to proper values. And also, ironically, our MC has a heart condition, but of course I don't know if this actually ties in. Thoth maintained the universe, and Ma'at cosmic order. As MC is the cosmos, there's an interesting parallel, and I do wonder how Egyptian inspiration is incorporated. As we've spoken previously, the moon is a key theme for Zayne MC, but especially the concept of wisdom is something his character embodies. God who dares trespass upon the forbidden territory shall know the grievous price of exchanging for truth. This mirrors Zayne's torture as a price for learning of MC's fate in the Foreseer myth. The realm of truth being a forbidden territory, his mind was not permitted to wander in, as he was forbidden from seeing his own fate, because his fate was entwined with that of MC. I could not find a direct meaning for the word Ayenzu, but I did find a similar word in Anzu, a demon in multiple Mesopotamian religions, and we know Mesopotamia is one of the inspirations for the myth. This massive bird, in a Sumerian myth, as a half-human storm bird, stole the Tablet of Destiny, which belonged to Enlil, an ancient Mesopotamian god associated with wind, air, earth, and storms. He was regarded as so holy that not even other gods could look upon him. This is because he was the chief deity in the Sumerian pantheon, and his temple Ur was regarded as the mooring rope of heaven and earth. The temple Ur separates An, heaven, from Ki, earth, which allows the world to be occupiable by humans. There are various accounts of him across different faiths, of him deigning immortality to others as a boon after surviving a flood, or even causing a flood to exterminate humans due to his own irritations. There are aspects of mirroring with Zayne Smith, and as a more heavenly god linking to humanity and punishing them, with Annihilation rings true for this current incarnation of Zayne.
Send you away from here now.
Apologies for my pronunciation of different languages across this. I'm trying my best. Zayne's Destiny Stone could be mirroring the story of the Tablet of Destiny that belonged to Enlil. Within the Ninurta myth, the tablet granted Enlil his authority as ruler of the universe, and was stolen as Enlil prepared to bathe. This caused wide-stretching calamity, with rivers dying and gods losing their powers due to the tablet's taking. This could be why Zayne's power in the second kindled appears to be sparse and the area around them is in ruins. Thus, he uses the remainder of his power to get MC to a better place. A sunset's glow shines within the triangle as he begins to inscribe into space itself, a promise to help his love achieve a tomorrow he believes he cannot have, further reinforcing the dimensionality of his magic as they press onto the edge of the calculated change. Sunsets for Zayne MC are associated with tomorrows, but tomorrows are a bit deeper than just the next day. We'll go into this a little more later. Linking back to Enlil, his wife, Ninlil, is a goddess who shared many of her husband's purposes, such as declaring destinies, and was regarded as a Sina deity and pantheon head. Their coupling results in the conception of Nana, the moon god, and other underworld deities. The mirroring and symbiotic nature of the movement and dialogue earlier that we discussed during the combat sequences makes Zayne MC seem inspired by the Sumerian myth couple. Hundreds of thousands of calculations, the lone chance of life within all failures. This aspect of Zayne canonizes a long-standing theory I have had about his character, which I name the Monster of the Universe theory. And we will explore that in the later section of the video. But this dialogue further reinforces the infinity and mathematic perfection and blending with different destinies that is principal to Zayne MC's concept as a couple. The reason they have the most canon lives that we know of, and Zayne's true value to the universe. With Niava by your side, you shall break free from this endless fate of destruction. Niava seems to have transcended being a place to a state of being. Similarly, I could not find a direct association with the word, but found similarity with Nineveh, an ancient city of Upper Mesopotamia. Within the incorrect order exists a single variable. If gods have selfish desires, if it's you. This ties back to the earlier declarations across Zayne's content and behavior that for MC, his rules, reason, and responsibilities fall by the wayside to ensure her care. He'd give anything of himself to give everything to her, but their relationship is not one-sided. It is a mutual resonance of giving and taking. The fall is no simple tribulation, but a great fall from divinity. Divine stone lost, the world is failing, and it's now turning into a fail state that he may be trying to attempt to save MC from. His path of annihilation diverted, and both will pay the price. That is until MC takes it upon herself for their very minds to resonate, and for her to form her own sacrifice. I'm willing to exchange principles for endless vitality. for the next encounter woven into our intersecting destinies. She gives everything to give him a fighting chance, a desire and knowledge that no matter how bleak things are, they will meet again. Unlike Foreseer and Gardner, who did not remember in their new incarnations, there is an awareness in the god of Annihilation and his goddess. They are a god and goddess who, in spite of the principles of the universe and their responsibilities, choose to manifest a fighting chance again and again. The sun symbol that then appears with their resonance emulates Mesopotamian, Egyptian artistry of the sun, with an overhanging moon and the curve at the bottom appearing almost like a bow. But it also looks like a mirrored version of the Greek omega, which means the final letter in a set. However, the beginning of the Greek alphabet is alpha, so what this could represent is an inverted finale instead of a new beginning, suggesting this ending is not a true ending. That within her resonance she has sealed the fate of this timeline, but it has not quite ended to finality.
You actually gave all your power to me.
Now Zayne witnesses her sacrifice, and the deaths we were told about in the Foreseer myth are now actualized. The snow globe visual as the sun is setting on the world intentionally mirrors what happens at the end of Dawnbreak Promise. In both situations, there is a kiss of goodbye to what was happening in the current world state, and they felt they were the only two people left in the world. For Zayne MC, it's more of a private, sweet moment where no one else is around, and it's them sharing those final seconds of sunlight together, surrounded by boats that were honoring the dead. For the god of Annihilation and his goddess, the world itself appears to be dying. This myth was always going to release after Zayne's birthday, and the dialogue from Dawnbreak Promise and even its name itself links back to Foreseer and the true end of the Foreseer myth, which is the A Long Night's secret time.
Sleep. We'll meet again when dawn greets the world once more. This is a promise. I promise to you.
The dawn break links back to the value of celestial bodies for Zayne MC. The sun setting is not just the end of a day, it is the ending of a world. Zayne's declaration is that within the new world, a new timeline, and new incarnations, they will meet again.
Before the snow stops. I thought you'd come when the snow stopped.
This is the last prophecy, which ties back into our beginning of the end with Foreseer, who viewed prophecies, and Zayne's mirroring of Themis in this myth. Zayne is aware they will reunite, and this is before any other entities got involved and start messing with their memories. Looping back to the snow stopping, this is also crucial when it comes to Zayne's ice evil, and obviously his affinity to snow. Snow taking over the world at the world's end works for how cold the universe is and dying planets freezing over. Snow and ice act as the preservation of memory and the remembrance within that. A snowflake's fractals mirror deviating paths, but converge at the point of intersection, like Zayne's identities across lifetimes, and all the variants he may have existed in. Just like Dawnbreak Promise and the end of Death and Rebirth, Zayne MC reach an open and public cemetery. These two meetings within spaces with odes to the end lead to this exact moment in the delivery of Zayne MC's overarching story. Zayne believes that life is a line that must be defended in Dawnbreak Promise, but it seems in this myth he's now learned the sanctity of life. The crux of the stories becomes honoring what has been lost and the strength to remember. MC even further suggests this when she says to Zayne, "The heart of the Arctic is a brave heart that remembers." There is a cruel irony in this when you remember that Astra has also messed with Zayne's memories. The unifying visual is being on the edge and the end of everything, but an everything that persists into the next cycle. Zayne says this is the edge of the Arctic. You can even say it's the edge of the world, where they share their final moments in the snow as if they are the only two in the universe across both stories. During the subject of forgetting, MC makes the realization I don't want him to experience loneliness, no matter what. For current Zayne, this hits particularly hard, as we know from his confiding in MC in Iceborne Warmth, he got used to being alone, though he did not want it.
Not at all. I've simply learned to accept it, grow accustomed to it. I even allowed it to reshape my life. But I don't enjoy being alone. I don't want to enjoy it.
But the cruel irony to witness this before Edge of Continuum is that the god of Annihilation seems to have been left alone. MC says to Zayne, there are many ways to help someone remember, multiple shared instances between them, as how many things can serve as switches for our memories. This feels like it's foreshadowing for a bigger moment of memory for Zayne MC in the current plotline, especially in terms of potentially what the Edge of Continuum does deliver. And for the most special people and moments, the body will find a way to help remember, leading to the beginning of a polar night. Zayne MC share a kiss at the edge of the world as the sun leaves, which the god of Annihilation also experiences, only alone, in a decayed world with power, but not the one who made life worth living. Just an endless yearning until the next encounter converges their paths once more. We touched upon in the beginning how being on the edge of continuum is to be on the precipice of change. But with the greater implications of Zayne's law overlaid, this also means delving into the scope of an eternal aspect of a universal truth. A continuum within the factors of a space and time sees both aspects perceived independently as their own constant continuums. But the way Love and Deep Space interacts with these concepts through a sci-fantasy lens pushes the boundaries beyond the third-dimensional space. A four-dimensional space takes the stand of the three-dimensional world and further extends it with the condition and addition of time. Within that, the intersection of time and space is what combine for the precedent of the stories we can perceive through the experiences of the game. I posit this as when you first encounter the myth screen, you receive a message akin to the following. These are long-forgotten myths. You can unlock stories from another dimension. A lot of people's perceptions of Philos comes down to Xavier's third anecdote, where after the Earth died, it became Philos. But as Philos is also apparently a galaxy, I think it comes down to the original descriptions of myths as taking place in other dimensions. Dimensions doesn't necessarily mean a variant by principle, but there are aspects to a dimension that constitute to its setting, and that's where I'll add the aspects of dimensional space and dimensional time. Dimensional space relates to the physical aspect of the corporeal world we interact with within the space of a lifetime. These are three dimensions. Dimensional time relates to the point in time that the lifetime occurs. This is an extra dimension. And then culminating, this makes the fourth dimension. The Deep Space Tunnel allows us to perceive across different timelines and functions as follows. The Deep Space Tunnel is like a maze of branches, each leading us down a different path. The description provided by the Infinite Skies article posits not only a basic framework to understand the Deep Space Tunnel and what it allows us to perceive, but also the justification for the Tomorrow's Catch-22 alternate universe. Despite this being the common verbiage in games for this sort of what-ifs exploration, I would say Tomorrow's Catch-22 is more accurately a parallel timeline, observing similar incidents, yet it is not an alternate, which to me is a different option. Each romantic route you pursue within the game is an alternate timeline, as all romances are independent of each other. And it is a choice. There are a few ways to imagine this, but due to the elaborate nature and multiple potential decisions and circumstances affecting each deviation for each unique timeline or instance in time to explore in myths, just imagine a core origin point surrounded by deviating branches. Some cut off, some persevere, and some branch further. Each romantic route sits independently, but the incidents across myths still occurred in some version of space and or time. The relevance in establishing this is that for Zayne as a being affiliated with the higher plane of existence, a fourth dimensional model needs an extra adjustment. The fractal library belongs to no civilization and no space or time. It is a space that can perceive other spaces that have been, are, and will be within their respective books, and Zayne is the owner. This means Zayne's existence works beyond our four-dimensional space model, and thus he sits within a five-dimensional space with the addition of planes of existence, a higher plane. I say planes of existence because if there are other planes beyond the higher and the standard, that then says to me that potentially Zayne could also explore those, as again, the fractal library has no conditions. The planes of existence posit the possibility of entities, areas, and civilizations that work beyond the standard boundaries of a third-dimensional space and the alternate possibilities of a fourth-dimensional space. Zayne's ability to perceive another dimension in his dreams, which is the Dawnbreaker reality, and vice versa, which is most likely a future variant timeline, I will die on that hill, but not the direct future, as within the current convergence of the timelines, the future is not decided. This still speaks to his ability to exist and perceive beyond the dimensional constraints of his human form. Furthermore, we get to witness him use dimensional magic in Death and Rebirth, with the creation of the Accessus bracelet for the boy, which opens a gateway that splits open the fabric of space to allow him to return to the fractal library.
I left the Accessus bracelet you made for me at the library. Can you make me another one, please?
After a resigned sigh, an ice bracelet materializes around the boy's wrist.
Thank you, emissary. I'll take my leave now.
The boy slightly raises his hand and his fingertips touch the air as a geometric shape gradually unfolds. He bows before stepping into the door woven from countless folded dimensions.
The emissary is a liar. I counted every single day for 7 years.
As if drawn to his accusation, the wind and snow seem to follow through the vanishing door. They're silent. This explicitly confirms that Zayne's power sits beyond the constraints of just elemental ice, and is actually dimensionality. Within the Foreseer myth, this is also established through MC delving into the Jasmine book and finding herself transported into a separate dimensional space wherein the Jasmine's representative of her lives with Zayne are akin to that of books within the Fractal Library.
My memories. Or perhaps it would be better to say they are the Jasmines in my memories. Each one is my life of another time.
Remember, in the Fractal Library chapter, we can perceive the books as whatever we want, but they are essentially the essence and potentiality of a universe. So the Jasmine fields representing each of his lifetimes are like a mini version of that. What's also quite interesting is if we perceive a planet freezing over as its death, MC also being the cosmos and having the power to basically fuel the planet and freezing over at the end of the myth just kind of speaks to that bigger godly power that she has. And I am really curious if that's potentially like the core root of the cryoresis. If the cryoresis is linked to creation and thus her death is required as she is the fuel for a planet to fuel creation, as Zayne is essentially held captive and unable to leave the library, or the Tower of Thorns as it is referred to in the myth, he created a tome to archive his past lives with MC that he could not remember and were obfuscated by Astra, who meddled with his memories. Zayne's ability to create such an object from the launch of the game is what triggered me to the potentiality of him being a higher dimensional being and the greater theory to his existence. The Master of Fate, Zayne, is Dasaming, a Chinese deity, and within the Xinsha myth, he directly utilizes Qi and is stated to wield the power of yin and yang and govern life and death. As a heavenly celestial being, the affiliation to a higher plane is only further cemented. As the god of Annihilation, the function of his powers requires Zayne to be both judge and corrector. Through analyzing his key art from the release trailer of the game that released in January 2024, that thematically applies to all Generation 3 release character myths, I broke down the themes as follows. Zayne's wielding Hermes' staff Caduceus conveys his transdimensionality and links to life and death, affirmed by Hades, the god of the underworld, with a bident on the left, and who we assume to be Hygeia, goddess of health, to his right. The opening text of Snow's Embrace, he governs life and death. The cyclical jasmines behind represent his innumerable lifetimes of loving MC. The daggers inwards, constantly as a target. He is always in frame. He states,
Imperfect order doesn't need to be corrected. True redemption lies in utter destruction. As the cosmos dances to the tune of eternity, life will reach the fathomless depths of deep space.
Zayne is the divine observer and corrector, once the Master of Fate and now the healer of realities. If you're touching on myths related to their original concept art, we will touch on Zayne's true form and value to the universe as its judge, witness, keeper, collector, and destroyer. The owner of the Fractal Library, where the potentialities of the universe are stored, observed, and with the ability to erase timelines, Zayne's law has grand implications. This all ties into Zayne's other myths and Death and Rebirth. But if they actually begin touching more on his original purpose in his next myth and form, it could relate to the shaping and makeup of the universe, and in some inferences, it does. I did not delve into this further because I was linking to this moment. This leads us to the next chapter and my long-time speculation into Zayne's origin, or final form. Zayne, the master of the universe. Zayne's dimensionality and position as a witness, corrector, and destroyer aligns to the title given to him as the god of annihilation. To bring about destruction, he must first be a witness, judge, and evaluate the value of an iteration of a world before the final decision is made. The amount of mathematical and scientific language is not just used because we're in a sci-fi concept, it's used because Zayne himself is a scientist through and through. To course correct, one has to be able to survey a situation, and to be a destroyer, he may also have the abilities of a creator. The dimensional aspect and the way the fractal library he owns interacts with both dimensional space and dimensional time further reinforces Zayne's abilities that transcend dimensions and planes of existence as an ascended and higher god. Despite MC's position as the variable, as stated in Master of Fate, and the mathematical nature of experimentation and examination of variant timelines, Zayne is once again in love with the one he is not meant to be in love with. This links together to the idea posited in Death and Rebirth that MC is a cosmic error who manifested beyond her own desires and should not exist. Much to the potential chagrin of other greater beings, she affects timelines and iterations of the worlds as the variable, a seed that will unwittingly sow chaos. but she can change the trajectory of worlds as she is the universe, entwined with the ability to resonate with all facets of form. The mathematical and scientific aspects of Zayne's existence thus began to resurface, and his human self is a mirror of his greater position and purpose. Zayne's ability to perceive across different timelines from outside the fourth dimensional space system, the library he owns and most likely created to witness and test all possible versions of the universe and timelines and investigate the outcomes, draws to the conclusions of Zayne's original self being a higher god who acts as the universe's master. From his erasure of a timeline in Death and Rebirth, which could potentially be destroying it or obscuring it from vision, the implications of the scope of his powers goes even further. This is why his neutrality is key in his role, and his avarice towards his desires for more with MC spell his initial downfall from what he was before. The god of Annihilation could be a calculation. He could also be Zayne's origin point with MC in terms of their love timeline. However, I also pose that it could in fact be his second life, depending on the framework of the myth and its conclusion. It could also be an ascension from Master of Fate, who all but disappears, leaving only the essence of his life force with MC in the form of his chi on the umbrella for her. After scouring across into another lifetime, their paths crossed, and potentially due to ascending, the dynamic is different. That said, I do think the god of Annihilation is meant to be seen as more of a universal god. Meanwhile, Dasaming is more so a heavenly god rather than a higher universal being. Within the myth, we see him descend with MC, them being at odds yet still choosing each other despite the cost, and the world itself being sunset, dying out. He's aware at the end of the trailer of the fact they will meet again, which does make me lean towards this being closer to his origin. For now, they have fated encounters across the cosmos, and this further begs the question of when the obfuscation of his memories by Astra began, and if Astra was still above Zayne or his peer before dissension. This to me links to how they coordinate the finale sequence, as it may directly link to a standard card that we have from Zayne since base game. To delve into this aspect, I'm now going to speak about Astra. And I know the Zayne is Astra theory is very, very popular. I too, once upon a time, also subscribed to this theory, till I had a moment of noticing some logical inconsistencies. I'm going to present the evidence and relay them to you first, and then we're going to discuss further. So to begin, from base game, the first main thing that you will remember knowing of Astra is what he put Zayne through in the Foreseer myth. Within the Foreseer myth, we know that Zayne is in service to Astra. He has on his staff the Creator Protocol that Gardener MC needs to cure her illness. Cryoriasis, a rare, strange disease. Physicians have only recorded a few cases in old textbooks. The infected will eventually lose consciousness and be unable to move as if frozen solid. This blue freezing over is very similar, if not the same, as what we basically witness at the end of the trailer, and I'm assuming at the end of the myth is what happens to MC. This is her death. So potentially some aspect of that stays with her. What's also important to note is that her illness is directly linked to the Creator Protocol, and her resonance with the Creator Protocol is what is slowly sucking away more and more of her life force. Astra is also using the Creator Protocol to monitor Zayne's behaviors. And we see this when he literally gets so angry at MC at her even suggesting he leave, to the point where he grabs her throat, but then keeps her safe when Icy Thorns, hence the Tower of Thorns name, come in and start attacking him. A core part of the myth is when Zayne uses his foresight to foresee MC's fate, but he did not know that their fates were entwined, and because he looked upon his own fate, he was tortured. That happens during the second kindled sequence, and initially MC thinks he is torturing himself, but what is actually happening here is Zayne's autonomy is being stripped, and he is being tortured and punished for doing something that he is not allowed to do, and he's clearly been punished for in the past as Skarsmire his body. The core thing that needs to be remembered here is he has no autonomy over his evil in this circumstance. Already we have some aspects that provide some logical inconsistencies to the Zayne is Astra theory, such as if a greater Zayne was Astra and he was perceiving a lesser incarnation of himself through the Creator Protocol and saw an incarnation of MC, you would assume he would then want to help that MC rather than let her die a slow and terrible death, especially when it is the Creator Protocol which is also leeching away at her life. Furthermore, Astra tortures Zayne with his own evil for witnessing his own fate. But that's it. There's no other repercussions. He doesn't lose his memories then. He doesn't have anything else. There's no negative, like if he then lost his memories, then there's a physical negative association with trying to spy his own fate, but nothing happens. It's basically like the equivalent of a god giving you a slap in the face and calling it day because there's no further repercussions, and Zayne is still able to go on to do what he does do, which is fully defy Astra and give MC the Creator Protocol. Now I'm going to posit the second thing, which was quite crucial and which I was referring to before, the Fragmented Dreams 4-star card. There is a bit of a setup to the card, but I want us to primarily concentrate on the specific instance of Zayne and his dreams, especially his nightmare. So please listen to the following.
It's not your fault. She's fine. Don't worry. You insist on living.
So the 3 lines, it's not your fault, she's fine, don't worry, if you insist on doing this, you will never. The first 2 lines already, it's not your fault, she's fine, don't worry. This is someone consoling Zayne. And now you could say that maybe it's his dad, or maybe it's a parental figure from the time when Zayne was a child. But I would argue that's refuted by the final line. If you insist on doing this, you will never. To me, that reads as a primordial and earlier version of Zayne who did something, hurt MC, or she was hurt in the process, and thus is being comforted by a peer, a friend, either a father figure or just someone he knows and is close to and sits within a similar sphere. Whatever Zayne is intending to do that his friend is trying to comfort him around has larger consequences, but it seems Zayne might be willing to pay the price anyway. Yet, as we know, his memories are obfuscated. He does not have memories of what's happened in the past. And as positioned before, dreams are crucial to Zayne, as dreams allow him to perceive beyond his current dimension. Therefore, this could be him perceiving a past dimensional space and time within potentially even a different plane of existence of one of his previous incarnations, or even his origin. I'm going to put the pause button on Fragmented Dreams for now because it does loop into the next section, which is about Thorns Under the Moon. Within Thorns Under the Moon, Zayne and MC are in a temporary spatial realm caused by the Spatium Core and a Wanderer who basically is using said Spatium Core, which is emulating people's dreams. In Zayne's case, it's emulating his dreams of Dawnbreaker. He then is tortured, and we get to see more of how mentally vulnerable Zayne is and how much the grief and guilt weigh down on him, both of what he's been witnessing happening with Dawnbreaker in his dreams, but also of his own past with William, and most likely also the childhood incident as we've seen with the girl.
Zayne, please, kill me. It's just an illusion. It's not real. It's not.
They're your patients, how could you? Am I next? You'll kill me, right? No, you're not Zayne. Who are you? After the emotional and mental torture, he does get rid of the protocol cluster. However, a figure emerges. He sends an ice spike to it, yet he completely, once again, loses autonomy of his own body. And then we hear a voice. The darkness is suppressed and his surroundings change. It's foggy. A blurry figure gradually emerges from the cracks in the space. Zayne conjures black ice and takes aim. However, his body becomes immobile as if he's frozen in place.
You shouldn't throw yourself into danger just for her.
Who?
His entire body becomes encased in ice. Black crystals pierce his chest and spread to his fingers. The intense pain leaves Zayne's back drenched in sweat. He's unable to control his body as he collapses. His heart races in fear as he hears that cold voice.
Seek your destiny. Only then can you be redeemed.
The incidents here are mirroring what happened during Foreseer's second Kindled. Zayne again lost autonomy and was being tortured with his own ice. And that voice, to me, sounds similar to the voice we've heard before, because not only is it chastising, but it's also comforting Zayne. And to my interpretation, this is the voice of Astra telling Zayne, you need to redirect your efforts to what your destiny is and not towards MC. She is not as much of a priority, but to Zayne, she is. This is why it is fair to assume that, again, it is Astra speaking to Zayne, but Zayne does not know that this is Astra. But also, the voice doesn't sound like our current Zayne either, so... And I know some people have been like, oh, you could just be using a different voice, but like, that's just so... That to me is very lazy writing. Extremely lazy writing, and I would be incredibly unimpressed. To me, it reads more so, Astra is not just this purely bad person who's got it out for Zayne. He's trying to get Zayne back on the right path, especially as he was a higher being. And so he's doing everything he can to course correct Zayne's own behaviors as Zayne carries on reincarnating across different timelines. So Astra is both helping and punishing the deviating versions of Zayne. Finally, we're going to look at a scene from close to the end of Death and Rebirth, which was harrowing the first time I saw it and extremely upsetting because I did not expect the revelation I wanted so bad to come about this way. Once again, similar to Thorns Under the Moon, we see Zayne getting emotionally and mentally tortured with the voices playing in his head, and he recedes more into himself, which allows another version of him to kind of take hold.
Aren't you a doctor?
Am
Why
I going
can't
to
you
die?
save anyone?
Pay for this?
I didn't sacrifice everything just to become someone ordinary and powerless.
One day, you will hurt her.
The DAR sequence also mirrors what happened in Thorns Under the Moon, with Zayne recessing into himself with the emotional and mental torture he is going through, and thus a different version of him takes hold. I actually have a theory regarding how we never actually met real Dawnbreaker throughout the entirety of Death and Rebirth again, and I don't think we ever will, because I don't think there is a switch. I think it's just an internal switch within Zayne himself, not him switching between different incarnations and somehow mentally bending the way his psyche works. I do think, however, this is either him within a different mental space, and he is being manipulated to perceive MC as a monster as per the first time lock key art, or his autonomy has been completely stripped and someone else is working through him. Primarily, my sights are on Astra. Again, I don't think Astra is completely a bad guy, but I could see him being not happy about what's happened to Zayne, and also the results of MC's existence and what it's basically done to the universe. We also have a moment of revelation in Death and Rebirth, where MC perceiving Zayne as a younger version, on her younger version, and she hears his voice, but she doesn't associate it with Zayne. It says question marks. This to me could further indicate a voice speaking through Zayne, and whoever this voice has been who's been speaking to Zayne has also been two question marks this entire time.
Your existence is a mistake. You must be eliminated.
It's as if Black Frost has covered his eyes. Having materialized in his raised hand, sharp ice crystals hurl themselves at me. We have a few different potentialities of how the whole situation could work, but I think another core important part is at the end of Death and Rebirth, when reading the text, the cycle of life and death is an inescapable truth. The constraints of matter break down and shackles of time and space gradually dissolve. Countless civilizations rise and fall among the stars. But humanity's long undisturbed period of exile will also come to an end. I wouldn't understand that until much later. The creator had planted foreshadowings in an era predating life itself. And now I want us to remember, yes, I think there is a potentiality for Zayne to have creator magic, especially with how they have illustrated his powers in terms of the fractal library, and potentially also in terms of what's going on in the God of Annihilation myth. But also one must remember that during the Foreseer myth, Zayne was looking after the Creatio Protocol that was Astra's protocol. Therefore, the Creatio Protocol makes Astra the creator. And that's why this dialogue was in Zayne's portion of Death and Rebirth. Now, if Zayne was Astra and the Creatio Protocol originally belonged to him, hence he can annihilate but also potentially create, but he's a bit more removed and a bit of a judgy guy. If in a possibility, despite the links to all the prior content and some of the logical inconsistencies, Zayne is still Astra, the way I see it working is if it was a mantle and a helm that Zayne wore, it was a title that he had when the Creatio Protocol was his. I perceive that Astra may have been that mantle, and Zayne had forfeited it when he had fractured himself from being a higher, godly, universal, pantheonic, ascended being to a bunch of different incarnations. Some god, some human. Who knows? He could literally have been anything at this point, though he generally tends to be in some positions of reverence and power. The reason he would fracture himself is to investigate personally all of the different possibilities in the timeline, because he is a scientist and mathematist first and foremost. He's trying to find the perfect calculation. And the fractal library is basically a library of all of his calculations, both to be in the past have existed, because there will always be a Zayne that exists. As he fractured himself across time and space to investigate all possibilities to find the correct outcome for himself and MC, or most primarily just MC. His love makes him so ready to embrace the tragedy of multiple partings for the hope of one correct outcome. That outcome may well be the future of the Hunter timeline, as we are again in the convergence of the timeline with a future undecided. I've had this theory for a very long time. I've actually held this theory quite far into last year, but I wasn't really talking about this game publicly back then. But I did when Death and Rebirth basically released, and I didn't even get to play it yet. I did put out a very messy, kind of sounding like a mad scientist thread, which I will post, where I was basically kind of touching upon it. So basically, I was just establishing, like, when I saw Death and Rebirth, I was freaking out because when I saw the different graphics with little parts mentioned, and then obviously again the fractal library went mentioned once more, which to me, when I read about the fractal library, I felt even more solid because initially I just had I initially just had the idea of the Master of the Universe theory, but I didn't take it to. But I didn't have as much evidence in the game. A lot of it was like left to subtleties, and then Fractal Library Q&A came out, and I was like, oh. Mathematician, scientist, investing in different timelines, da 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 da. And then we obviously got these graphics, and my mind began to delve further. This first post was actually from May 19th, and then on May 24th, I then start writing this crazy scientific thread where I'm basically delving into some ideas of the theory. I know it's going to sound crazy, but I'm hoping that with all the prior information I've given, you can actually understand what I was trying to say at this time. So then on the 24th, that was going to be when the final chapter of Time Lock Key came out. And I was really hoping that we would get something that was somewhat confirmed the Master of the Universe theory for me. I know initially it was just like, this could be crazy and super fun. But then slowly we were getting pieces that were adding into it. And now, after watching the God of Annihilation trailer, I feel like it could actually be more of a possibility, especially as dimensionality has been further canonized as within Zayne's power. So key things that I want to point out from this thread are, even if it comes to him being close to the source, investigating the fracture and interwoven timelines to reverse engineer the perfect fix, I will take it. But even if they just touch on his omnipresence that I believe in so badly, and how he will always exist in a fracture, I pinpointed some titles I could see working: the Celestial Architect, Archivist of Realities, the Healer of the Universe, and Fracture, and more. Any of the directions that interweave with the core principle of him being an investigator across the different timelines. But it comes down to pairs. Pairs meaning the word similar for partings in Chinese, and separations, which we know, as we've seen with the Jasmine Flower Field, Zayne MC have gone through many times. Him always having to exist in one way or another. You cannot have an isolationist view. It's ascension and deduction across space. Zayne, as an ascended being, deducing the correct path across space. But people keep reducing Zayne to mortal boundaries, even though it was made clear in Foreseer that he does not sit within mortal boundaries. Foreseer future cannot actually happen. Whatever future we actually get is not going to be that, because Foreseer is a future variant state. Everything functions in a loop. We go from a beginning to an end. Once that end fails, we loop back around into different variant versions. And that's why there's so many different timelines. Also, in Thorns Under the Moon, Hunter MC remembers lines from Foreseer Zayne in the second Kindled.
The ice. It's dangerous. Don't touch. It's too dangerous. I won't be able to control. Leave. Now. It's too dangerous. I won't be able to control. Leave. Now.
And this is why I say it has to have existed in a linear past for it to even operate how it does now and in Thorns Under the Moon. Therefore, I call it a future past, because it's a future variant that's already existed in a past calculation. And even if the future is laid or overlaid onto the past, time is interactive and linear. It's a correction each time when we go through a timeline. It all entwines with the conjunction of the timelines into a singular reality, which is our current timeline and Hunter MC's timeline. That has multitudes, but that's the meta principle anyway. Zayne was never just a mortal. Going further, if the punishment that Zayne is going through is related to an original punishment and the original fracture of timelines, but that's why I even admit that would be really greedy of me to want. There's nothing wrong with being mortal, but the punishment Zayne goes through is twofold. It's a warning and suppression. He is being informed by a higher deity when he is going beyond what they like, but Zayne is still going to persist in his own aims. All fractals and variants of the universe conjoin to the core, like a snowflake, the fractal library. But it's also a loop, overlaying again and again to get to the core principle in each fractal until it's variable. The variable is always MC, and the point at which her intersection or interference with a timeline deviates it from its purpose or how it could have gone. And then finally, obviously, Zayne is known as the atheist, as an atheist is what owns the fractal library, but an atheist wouldn't consider himself a god, for he is just a god. This all to me further cemented Zayne's godhood is still present. He's not just a demigod, he's not just a heavenly deity, he is a supreme god. And I want to touch upon this even further, how it relates to the main story. And we see that finally with God of Annihilation. They make it explicitly evident that the level of god that Zayne is in a completely different sphere. This does not in any way, shape, or form take away from the kind of god Raphael is. They both interact with divinity very, very differently. Raphael has associations to his people, to the corporeal world, literally affects the weather, affects the planet itself. Meanwhile, Zayne is more so to do with the universe, dimensionality, and planes of existence. I personally think that between Raphael and Zayne, you get both types of gods incorporated in such interesting ways. The god of people and directly has interactions and consequences with his people, and then a celestial god who interferes more with the incorporeal. In the incorporeal, more so the dimensional and the spiritual. Linking back to God of Annihilation and how the myth ended, we saw snow take over the area, and as already discussed, this could be linked to the dying of the world. We see snow obviously a lot across the game's content anyway. Not all snow is Zayne's, but we have seen Zayne cause and change weather conditions, not in the way Raphael does, but specifically in terms of snow. Maybe because of the world itself, or a reflection of Zayne's sorrow causing so much snow, especially if his magic can conjure water like Master of Fate. The other time we saw it was during the pre-release trailer when he froze over Arxo Hospital, but we don't know when this incident took place, and it seems it might be yet to take place or take place within an alternate time, especially as he once again talks about when you and the world wake up, I hope we do not meet again. There is a damage coming with his dreams. There may have potentially been a cost that occurred within a different variant which went wrong, and thus Zayne does not want to meet her again, because he might have hurt her again. Within Zayne's second anecdote, he is inferred to have created a snowstorm at the end of the summer he was 12, thus before he turned 13, and he left MC. And at the time, he almost killed her, thus mirroring the pre-release in it being a situation where his evil may be going out of control. In Foreseer myth, we see Zayne create a blizzard to warn off travelers.
After getting lost in the snow, they'll have no choice but to turn back.
The umbrella ritual at the end of Master of Fate required Zayne to essentially create a ton of snow, which was used to cover all of the umbrella frames, and he left one behind for her that she could obviously, as we said earlier, sense his chi and life force from, as it took so much of his power. But again, it's another instance of Zayne affecting weather conditions, being snow.
If you have an umbrella, keep it. Don't give it to other people. As long as the snow on the umbrella doesn't melt, you don't need to be afraid of anything.
We see snow begin to take over the place as Zayne allows himself to give in to his wants, suggesting his evil instability, and his love in that is what is out of control. And MC teases but also gives in, accepting everything it means to be with him and more.
Everything is spiraling out of control. How can you pretend you're not affected?
Then finally, I posit in Death and Rebirth, what we saw was primordial snow, which was referenced back during the Chrono Rift catastrophe. The latter is most crucial as dialogue surrounding it lead to the aforementioned greater implications of Zayne's lore. Before the release of Zayne's myth, I might have sounded a bit more insane making the suggestion I'm about to, but with so many elements to his greater weight to the universe now canonized, the implications are both grim and damning. Chrono means time. Thus, the Chrono Rift catastrophe was a time in which the fabrics of times intersected to create rifts. During the entry part to Zayne's portion of Death and Rebirth, when snow falls, Tara has a fascinating exchange with MC. During the conversation of the end of the world, a snow descends. The concept of being watched by higher dimensional life forms is a possibility, as we know Zayne and Astra exist, but so does a higher plane. Tara mentions then of a polar night before the Chrono Rift catastrophe.
As a side note, there were strange omens before the 2034 Chrono Rift catastrophe. A polar night was present for 3 consecutive days,
which suggests at the time higher dimensional beings were involved in its formation, or at the very least observers. And the snow coming from the cosmos when Zayne is tied to the higher plane of existence, this only further suggests he has a larger part to play in terms of the future of the world, especially when unbound by mortal constraints. Thus his evil issues might not just be a genetic issue or he's being tortured by a greater god, but also his physical mortal body unable to contain his godly power. I also think it's very key to note that just like the end of God of Annihilation, snow is linked to the end of worlds, or being witnessed by higher dimensional beings, which ties back to the idea of the fifth dimensional space that Zayne occupies growing in relevance. The Chrono Rift catastrophe could also be a time rift catastrophe of an end of a world intersecting with our current world, thus the snow fell. And that's what the time rift is. It's not just a time rift, it's a time, and the rift portion is within space, and the space portion is a mix of a dying and breaking world with our current world. And MC is definitely involved as the cosmos and someone who exists beyond time and space and at the convergence of the timeline. This was a point in time and space where the world itself felt the repercussions for her existence. The subject of partings is most intriguing, as it plays into a repeating visual motif with Zayne and birds, of birds representing meeting again, and meeting again multiple times. Arcticions and Foreseer are almost crystalline long-life birds, that no matter the length of time would remember someone, echoing Zayne's textual dialogue may have remembered her in current time from a previous time. We see these birds visualized in Iceborne warmth when they swoop past Zayne and MC as they embrace in a spatial version of the fractal library. These birds that we also see across Master of Fate and also God of Annihilation, symbols of returning, thus Arcticions linking to Zayne, and souls who always remember. This is where the entwined fates dynamic and fated encounters dynamic comes into play, as the birds essentially represent those fated encounters. The golden birds for both Master of Fate and God of Annihilation could be swallows, which in China are linked to spring. Now, this is where we're going to have to use a bit more of the visual motifs. Spring is the time past the never-ending winter and the bleak night. It is a new beginning. It is rebirth. In a way, swallows could also represent dawn breaking and life emerging once more, and a new world with a new beginning, a tender reunion of fated souls. And that's why also in Absolute Zeal, they make inferences to life coming back into being when Zayne MC couple. If when a world dies, it enters a period of winter, the spring that comes is that breath of rebirth and a new world. Just like when the sun sets and dawn finally breaks, that dawn break is the ascension and creation of a new world, wherein Zayne and his Jasmine are fated to meet again. Before his love came into his life, there was only a never-ending winter.
To sense snow is to sense my presence.
If we see winter as a time for calm, silence, and remembrance, but also death, we have to consider that true reality can be bleak. Happy endings are not a given, but everlasting love and the choice to endure for another is.
I don't want the person I like to get hurt.
Zayne asked his gardener what she does in sadness, and her mind went to swaying flowers and dancing. But in the most dark and lonely realities, one does not need the sun, but just to find someone to dance with you.
After a never-ending winter, I met the one who brought spring into my life.
In the snow and cycles of pain, through transgressions and incarnations and tragedies without end, Zayne and his Jasmine have but one selfish wish.
Don't leave me.
To be at each other's side and endure what the universe has to offer, at the tempo of their own footsteps across deep space.
I'll wait for our reunion.
And he will scour every reality to find the one that lets them dance forevermore.
It's not me. You are the variable here. My changes involve you.
So, thank you so much for sticking around with me. I think this video is going to turn out to be really, really long, and I really wanted to, immediately get into the God of Annihilation myth today. It's literally released today, but I had all these thoughts. I was working on the script for so long, but I also had real life come in the way. But yes, that's a compilation of basically a bunch of my speculation, a bunch of things I could put together, and some research. I hope you enjoyed, and I know there's a lot more research and aspects that could be evidence or gone into, but this is as much of a quick compilation I could do of all my thoughts. I'm very, very story and emotionally aligned, so I tend to lean a bit more towards that kind of dialogue when I'm talking about these things. We went through everything together, from history to metaphysics to obviously how things work in narratives. I'm really excited to find out if any of these things link, if I was even remotely in the right direction. Zayne means so much to me as a character, and I'm fine with being wrong. I just hope that I was at least on the money with some aspect, especially as I have been on the money with Lemurian sea god myth, as well as King of Dark Knight myth, as well as a bunch of portions of Zayne's portions of Death and Rebirth, and just calling all of that out. So this would mean so much to me, but we're just going to see how that works because I'm just so fascinated as to where they're going with this story. So thank you so much for spending time with me. I hope you enjoyed this big fat lore dive. I know it kind of extended beyond the God of Annihilation, but I thought, hey, let's just talk about all these facets and bring them up together. Please do let me know if you actually enjoyed videos like this, because deeper analysis and conversations like this is what I made my channel for. So I really hope that it resonated with you, and if it did, please do let me know. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye!